Hey, good news, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Business in the Know. And this time, like every time, we have something pretty fascinating, especially if you're the kind of person that has a product, an idea for a product, especially a food product. How do you get it from here onto the shelf so money drops into your cash register? Good question. And I've often wondered about it. Good news, Paul Batterton has a guest for us today. Paul, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Mike. Hello, everyone. Today, we're joined by Lawrence Batterton, who's a professional natural product broker specializing in health and beauty care products. Lawrence is a lifelong entrepreneur. He has a master's degree in global strategic management, and he founded Batterton Brokerage 25 years ago. He is also the founder and CEO of his own brand, King Floyd's Bar Provisions, which launched 4 years ago. Lawrence, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
You know, it's we have a whole bunch of questions, so let's just start off. You know, a creative person wakes up one day with an idea. What do they need to do to get onto the path to the store shelf? What's the first thing?
Right. I think originally when we were talking about this, I think you said something, you know, what are the 3 steps you would take to and I thought, you know, maybe we should title it, what are the 3,000 easy steps you take to get to? But so it's, you know, it's a process, but as we had kind of briefly touched on before, you know, it depends on what it is. And like I said, we specialize in health and beauty care products. So a lot of what we do is we represent companies that manufacture dietary supplements and body care type products, cosmetics and things like that. And so generally speaking, you know, the folks that are selling those type of products are really marketing companies kind of. So they'll have a recipe, an idea for something, and then they'll go to a contract manufacturer. Kind of jumping.
How would I find one?
Okay, well, that's a good question. Again, it depends on the product, but the type of product you're doing. But there's, you know, if like let's just say you're doing something like a food product, you might start at something like the Private Label Manufacturers Association. It's they have a trade show that is just manufacturers of private label, primarily food products type of things. So, and then as far as in the dietary supplement world, there's just a handful of companies that do it because the economies of scale are so great in that particular category. So, yeah.
What's the ticket price to get in the game? I've got this great idea. What kind of check do I have to write in the first inning to get a manufacturer to take me on and get me a prototype?
There's generally minimums. The prototype, you know, can be real cheap. I mean, you can do that on your home computer if you have like an idea for fill in the blank, you know, a spice blend as we were discussing earlier, or something like that, or a dietary supplement, even, you know, whatever ingredients you think might be good or something like that. But when it comes to supplements, you're looking at, you know, the very smallest run that we might do in a tablet or a capsule would be like 100,000 capsules or tablets. Soft gels, you're probably looking at 250,000 to 1 million soft gels. Powder, you know, then so it's in there. It's, you know, somewhere 1,000 bottles to on up. You can get started pretty small.
And so what's the amount, would you say, with a budget that
well, it depends on, you know, the ingredients and what go into it, as far as just the product itself, vary hugely. You know, you can get, you know, if you have like, I'm just going to pull something out of the air, maybe a vitamin C with some other herb product in it or something, you go pretty cheap. And so maybe a few $1,000.
Okay.
But if it's ingredients that are really expensive, like say coenzyme Q10 or something like that, then you know, and depends on what you put in the product, basically. So it can be, $50,000 or something like that. But that is just to get the product. I've had companies call me, hey, I've got a garage full of toothpaste or something like that. And now what do I do? So it's like, and it's going to expire in a year, that kind of thing. So the cost of getting the product in your hands is kind of almost like a minor cost, I'd hate to say, but.
And do I go to a manufacturer or first to a lab? Will the
Well,
manufacturer say talk to a lab first?
In the case of dietary supplements and food products, actually, and health and beauty care products in general, most of the contract manufacturers have in-house laboratories.
Oh, okay.
So they'll do, they want your business, and they'll do a lot of that work for you, and including consulting on what might go into the product, what the market is like for it, what their experience is with other marketers and manufacturers of that product. So they'll give you a lot of advice going into it.
So Lawrence, how tall is the mountain? You co-founded King Floyd's,
Mm-hmm.
and I wonder if you could take us through the King Floyd story and tell us how challenging that was.
Yeah, it's been pretty tall. I'm still climbing it. So one of the things, I got into that little product category through an association I have with one of our top vendors, which is Vitality Works. And they've been making herbal extracts for going on well over 30 years. Before that, I was also in the herbal extract business. So I've been doing that kind of thing for about 30-ish years. That sort of led into bitters, which I became kind of interested in bitters as a general thing. And then that kind of led to them, essentially they're a major ingredient in craft cocktails. And so around 7-8 years ago, I started playing around with that and set up a little kind of laboratory in my office and started just blending different bitters, giving them away to family and friends for the holidays and things like that. And then that kind of kept growing and growing, and I'd get more stuff and, better perk cones and different things I was playing with. And then it was became kind of an expensive hobby. And then through the encouragement from a couple of friends of mine, one of them a designer and artist, Darren Nelson, and he decided to just start a company in that world of craft cocktail making bitters. So then that's when I started developing it, and it takes time to make any kind of amount of bitters, because it just does. You have to let certain things soak for months and things like that, and alcohol solutions and so forth. But so yeah, from there I came up with this great name, Batterton's. My last name is Batterton, and took it to the trademark attorney, and she said, well, that's too close to another company that is in the business called Bitterman's. I said, okay, well, what about Batterton? And she said, well, no, that's also too close. So I couldn't even use my own name in the product per se. After that, backing up a little bit, I found a picture at a flea market of this guy that's on the label now, and I thought that guy is the perfect guy for the front of a bitters bottle. And so my friend Darren designed beautiful packaging around it, really old-timey Barbary Coast kind of feel to it, and then took that over to Stainbrook and Stainbrook, our trademark attorneys, and she put me through this whole thing about what we could call it and what we couldn't. So after that, I came back and we thought, well, Floyds. My dad's name is Floyd. My middle name is Floyd. I thought that's kind of interesting, and that's also not trademarkable because it's a surname, and too common, I suppose, and other reasons. So then we kind of went back to the drawing board and we thought, okay, well, let's put something in front of that or behind it. So we thought, Captain Floyd's or Corporal Floyd's or, Brother Floyd's or all of these different things. And then we came up with King Floyds and thought, that has a ring to it. And we like it. And it kind of had a little bit of a tie-in to another, the kind of the Barbary Coast figure. What's his name? Emperor Norton. And if you're familiar with him, it's kind of an interesting story there from the turn of the century. So thought King Floyd's. And so we went back to the drawing board, and Darren said, well, what are we going to do with all this effort that we put into the logo? And so I said, just Photoshop a crown on them, and that's it. And we're done. And that's how the logo and the brand kind of came about. So that is a big part of it, obviously, of selling anything, is getting the branding and the packaging down.
For entrepreneurs who are watching, what would you advise we got to set aside for the trademark process? Is that a very expensive? And how long did it take you? Do you remember?
At least it takes, well, the whole process is probably upwards of a year. By the time you get a good trademark attorney and so forth, you're talking at a minimum of $2,000. Probably closer to $5,000, really depends on how many categories and things that your idea kind of expands into. For instance, for us, did we want to trademark bar tools, or did we want to trademark snacks, or do we want to trademark seasonings and things like that? So each one of those, the broader you do your trademark, the more expensive it gets.
Right.
If that makes sense. So.
And it's critical. From my own experience, I've discovered it's critical to get good legal advice on trademarks. Yes. And if you want to save a few dollars on that clock, you can begin to do your own research just at uspto.gov.
Yes.
Really good search mechanism. So I mean, it sounds like you got to this in a magical sideways kind of way. But if you're starting out fresh and you want to grab an available brand, that's a pretty good one.
You'd be shocked how much stuff is actually taken, and it's confusingly similar to something, and all of that sort of thing.
And the rules are a little head scratching.
Yes, they are. And some of the best money I've ever spent, though, is consulting with our trademark attorney. Just that initial consulting, I was like furiously writing notes during that time. And so I definitely recommend going straight on up to a lawyer who knows what they're doing with it.
Yeah, we all like to make fun of lawyers, but you know what? Nobody ever makes fun of their lawyer.
Right.
My lawyer happens to be my wife, so I get a double dose of never making fun of my lawyer. Great advice, Paul.
Yeah. So Lawrence, take us back to the story. So from the time you had the logo down, how long, just for our entrepreneur audience, how long did it take before we saw it in a store?
Probably
to set our expectations about how much front end work goes into launching
I would say probably from there was about 3 months, but we already had, we had been producing the product before that, maybe 6-7 months before that. So, yeah.
So we're all already in at least 9 months, and that's from somebody that has had a couple decades of experience doing this. So that's a good benchmark.
Yeah.
So,
realistically.
So, as a segue, your other hat that you wear is you're an expert at helping brands get onto the store shelf. What does a broker, a natural product broker do exactly for the uninitiated?
Okay. Yeah. So in general, there's a lot of people, a lot of companies always coming out with product. So there's a statistic, this is ancient statistic now, it's probably 10 years old or something, but someone counted up the number of SKUs in my industry, the natural products industry, and they figured it was probably somewhere north of 1 million SKUs, which stands for store keeping unit.
Wow.
You're looking at north of 1 million SKUs, seeking about maybe 40,000 slots in a big store. So you need someone to essentially go that has that relationship with those stores to go in and sell the product to them. And and that's going to facilitate that the supply part of the supply chain between the distributor, which might be just the manufacturer, or a distributor that specializes in that type of product, between them and the retailer selling it. And so that's what we do, is we facilitate that relationship between the manufacturer and the store and the retailer.
So you play a really important role, because if you've got 2 million SKUs competing for 10,000 slots, the competition is fierce.
Right.
So you would if I had a product, you'd represent me almost to the owner of a store chain. What's that contract look like? What is a good deal look like to the store and to me?
Well, generally speaking, mostly the stores will have buyers, and those are the folks that we have most of our relationships with. Sometimes it's the owner of the store, for in a smaller store, but most stores have buyers that focus on categories. So you'll have your wine buyer, your cheese buyer, your supplement buyer, your dry grocery buyer, et cetera, housewares, and so forth.
Lawrence, so it's extremely competitive. There are 2 million SKUs competing for 10,000 slots. So the role you play is very important. What does a good deal look like that you put together for the store, for your client? What does success look like?
Okay. Well, success is kind of a long run kind of a situation for both for the store and for the manufacturer. So for the manufacturer, just getting on the shelf is kind of a success in that sense. And then the real success is obviously for the product to keep turning and stay on the shelf so that it can be they can ultimately make money and turn a lot of the product. And so it's really for both ends of the spectrum there. It's the same. They want that product to stay on the shelf, garner new customers, keep people coming back in the store. And so for stores, customer count is a huge thing, and keeping those customers coming in the store and not going to a different store to buy the product and things like that. From a numbers standpoint, it's always great if you can actually get money from selling the product. You can make a profit from selling the product, but generally speaking, when you go to put a product, and this has to be budgeted in when you're starting a company. So from a manufacturer's standpoint, it's good that you can just get on the shelf and have the opportunity to sell your product. Generally speaking, you're not going to make any money until the product is moving and they've reordered and reordered and reordered. From the store's perspective, it's similar. They want a long-term relationship where that product is moving and it's a success in that way for them too, because they want their customers coming back for that product. And customer count and so forth is very important for stores to keep their customers coming back. It's kind of what grocery stores and health food stores have to have. From a financial standpoint, it's one of the things that manufacturers have to take into consideration, is that the first flush of their products out into the marketplace will probably go out is a negative. It'll go out at a cost to them ultimately. They might be paying a slotting fee or something like that for the really big chains, your Safeways of the world and things like that, or they might be actually giving the product to, in a Whole Foods situation, they have a free fill policy whereby they take a case of each or whatever for free in the very beginning. So then
really, that's the way Whole Foods decides to run things. They take a case for free just because they can.
Yeah, when you walk into a brand new Whole Foods, you're looking at probably 80+% of the product in there they got for free. So
I'll remember that next time I'm thinking about doing a little shoplifting at Whole Foods. I mean,
So so yeah, there's millions of dollars worth of product in a new store that they received from the manufacturers at no cost. And then they do the build out of the stores, their kind of contribution to that.
What does the store kind of, like in marketing, we always advise our clients, don't judge it inside of 6 months. Is there a benchmark like that a store will give a manufacturer where it's sort of a honeymoon period and
Absolutely.
they won't? What's that looking like typically?
Yeah, so that'll vary by the product in the store. But generally, the retailer's looking for that product to pay the rent on that space, so those 2 inches are worth a certain amount to that store. And that's generally thought of as turns. And so like something like bread or something like that, they might need, all of everything that bread supplier comes in to sell out every day. And then when you're looking at something like, say, a vitamin product, it might be, say, 6 a year, 12 a year, 24 a year of that SKU, because sometimes they might be, a 2 inches wide on the shelf. Every bottle might be $50 or something like that. So, that calculates out as some kind of what we generally refer to as like a velocity on the product.
Mm-hmm.
If the velocity is not there, they want to replace that with something where the velocity is there.
And how much time does a manufacturer have to perform on that basis before they run the risk of getting booted?
That varies as well, all over the place, really. But I would say some 3 months in the health and beauty care world, you're probably looking at around 6 months, I'd say on average, something like that,
So you got to perform within 6 months or you're in danger of losing the
So
opportunity.
the stores, they'll have now this is an asset on their shelf. They've purchased the product, or the company, the manufacturer's given them the product. So they'll try to sell it all, before they, on that initial order, before they make that decision. So you sell them 6 or 12 of something. And if they say, well, it took us a year to sell 6 of them, let's replace this with something else. Or they might say, wow, in that year we sold 50 of them, and it's earning its keep.
And your location on the shelf probably means a lot. I'm always wondering, why are some products at the top, some in the middle, and some at the bottom? And so can you tell us about what that is? And do you as a broker have the ability to negotiate where I am on a shelf if
Absolutely.
I'm a manufacturer?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's super important. The shelf placement is there's statistics about this, but something like 80% of product is sold within this much of your shelf, the eye level placement kind of thing. When you walk into a grocery store, I tell people sometimes you don't see people down on their knees too often shopping that bottom shelf, or getting out a ladder to get onto the top shelf or something. Yeah, it's extremely important. And yes, that is a big part of what we do, is we try to get the best placement for our products as for our manufacturer's products.
And can a manufacturer buy? I'm sorry, Mike.
Well, no, I think we're going to ask the same question. You talked about slotting fees. Is it as simple as that? Like, I'll pay more, or is there more complex negotiation around that? Like,
sometimes it's as simple as that. It's just you're either giving them this free product, or it's $75 per SKU or whatever. Sometimes it is just as simple as that. Plus, they need to desire to have the product and have the belief, and they need to be sort of sold on the product, and then you pay the slotting fee, or the free fill, or it could be just a discount. For the vast majority, it's some kind of a discount on the opening order.
So is it possible to buy your way onto a certain shelf?
With some retailers, yeah. Yeah, you sure can. They'll do that, but ultimately they don't want a slow seller. They don't want a top seller on the bottom shelf. They want, they're going to make those decisions on their own for the most part, but there's ways to encourage them to give you good placement, or what we call off-shelf placement, which means like the end cap. Like when you walk into a store, there's all the sale items on the end caps and so
Right.
forth. So those are negotiated deals, off shelf placement and things like that, where you give them extra discounts and whatever to get those different placements, or what's called cross merchandising, where we take a product and you might have it over and you might have something in more than one section, the same product, so that doubles your visibility in the store.
Oh,
You have more than one slot.
I have some more, Mike. Do you have questions?
carry on, man. I'm fascinated. My experience in this area is kind of more in the ice cream freezer, negotiating for, who's the planner for the freezer. Oh, Unilever? Well, it's going to make it hard to plan for a small brand. So the intricacies of getting into a Whole Foods now, I understand also SKUs have gone down since the Amazon purchase in a Whole Food.
Yeah, in Whole Foods, when even before Amazon took them on, I think it was probably part of the strategy to get Amazon to take them on. They reduced the number of SKUs in Whole Foods dramatically, and it was quite a time in the industry, because at that time Whole Foods was a big player. So since then, a lot of your mass market type players have gotten into the natural space. The
Right.
Albertsons and Safeways and Kroger's of the world. Now they have more of these type of products, and then there's some other players like Sprouts, for instance, who is almost as big as Whole Foods was back then. So
Right.
And in the last few sets of questions here, one is, if I see a product on a natural product shelf for $10, that's what Whole Foods is selling it for. How much of that really is the manufacturer getting?
The margin, generally speaking, if you're talking about in the health and beauty care world, your sort of basic margin probably be about 50%. So they're netting, of course, much less than that, because it's so expensive to run a retail operation. But the gross margin is probably up around there. In the grocery world, you're probably looking at a little lower, 35 to 40%. Is the kind of the expected margin. If the primary distributors to a lot of stores, like out here, it's United Natural Foods Incorporated, or one other big player and a few small players, they'll generally be offering the product at a 40% margin to the store, from the wholesale to the retail.
Mhm.
Now, however, the distributor also will discount those from there. So, a store might get a volume discount from that distributor of, say, 10% up to maybe almost 20%. So ultimately, and the distributor themselves generally take about a 25% margin.
Oh,
You'd be looking at,
so to get someone like UNFI to deliver it, to distribute it to all the health food stores, you got a $10 item. The store wants half. UNFI wants
25%.
25%.
Of that $5 now.
Of the $5.
Let's say call it $6, because they
Okay.
do about 40% margin on most everything.
Gotcha.
At least in my world. So you're looking at $4.79 or something is your distributor cost, because that's a fairly industry standard 25%. But I always call it, when manufacturers call us and we're talking about this, I always call it 25% plus on that infinitum, because it's like, so you have your introductory deals that get passed through. You have there's always advertising that's generally useless that get passed through to the manufacturer. So I say 25%, but it's probably in the long term closer to maybe 35%. So now you're looking at whatever that is, like $3, and then so that manufacturer might, on a $10 item, the manufacturer might see $3, something like that.
That's quite the benchmark.
Mm-hmm.
Volume, baby. We're after the volume.
Yeah. We lose money on every sale, but we make it up in volume.
Yeah,
So,
there's a
we
joke
have-
there, which we are not going to repeat anyway. Yes.
So last couple questions. So I prototyped my product. I've got a great idea. I call you for help. I'm ready. What are the big 3 do's and don'ts that you're going to tell me
Well,
as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. And, so I actually wrote that one down. But I won't refer to my notes. I would say that the biggest thing is to listen to the professionals, so listen to and learn from your mistakes is a big thing, and I'm saying that from personal experience. Way back when I had an ice cream business, and we were starting to manufacture ice cream. And at the time, there were about 5 dairies in the Bay Area. And I went to purchase what's the premix. It's like the raw material that goes into ice cream, from a dairy, and sat down with the CEO of one of the companies that we're looking to buy premix from. And he said, there used to be 25 dairies, and now there's 5. And pretty soon there's going to be 3. Because of the economies of scale of doing all this stuff. And he said, manufacturing your own ice cream, that's not very smart. And I said, well, I had kind of fallen in love with the idea of doing this and didn't listen to him. So, listening to the people that know what they're talking about, like Paul, for instance, when it comes to your profession, I'm listening to you, the attorneys and the, whoever you're getting advice from is probably knows what they're talking about. So that's a big do. Listen to the folks that know what they're talking about. Listen to your competitors. I've always said that, people who are successful in something are generally speaking, love to share their story about their success, and then they love to see other companies be successful in that. So listen to your competitors and your advisors. On the don't side, try not to fall in love with your idea. This is another thing that I've learned over the years. It's really easy to do that, to fall in love with an idea. And then, no matter what anybody says, it's like, yeah, she's a great girlfriend, but she lives in, across the country, and, she's 20 years younger than me, and da, 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 but they're in love. What are you going to tell them? That kind of thing. So those are a couple of biggies. Don't fall in love with the idea. Listen to the folks that know what they're talking about. Keep your powder dry as much as possible. Test your idea. That's another big thing. When you come up with something, there's multiple ways to test something. You can do up a few products and have a focus group, find out what other people think about it. And then, or you might test it by actually making some, if you can make something on a small scale-ish, then putting it in a store and seeing how it does, and then having said that, as I explained before, sometimes, you might have X dollars to launch this company, launch a product idea or whatever. Try to make it so that you're keeping some money aside, and you're not having to go out and beg your friends and family for money, the moment you start your company, and things like that. So just try to keep your powder dry a little bit. This is the way I
Good planning.
The general rule of thumb is you're always a little underfinanced.
Yeah.
Just a little.
So
Right.
Last question to take us home here. Who do you work with? You've been in the industry as a professional. You have clients. You're very selective now with whom you work. Tell us, how does one get started to work with you? And if I'm a manufacturer, what ducks do I have to have in a row before it makes sense for you to take me on?
Well, in our case, we've been around for quite a while. And so we kind of are better at taking a company that is somewhat established and then kind of bringing them to the next level. Now, having said that, I've always kind of had a philosophy and just an enjoyment of taking companies that are really in the beginning stages and seeing them grow. Some of our best clients we took from zero to where they are today, in that fashion. Yeah, so for us, we like to take a company that has some shelf placement, kind of knows what they're doing. I've always said I want to be your third broker. I don't want to be your first broker. So that kind of thing,
Well, and by the time somebody gets to you, at least they have, in theory, have proof of concept, some sort of supply chain funnel, and either a co-packer or manufacturing.
Oh,
And
definitely.
so maybe the short
Already
answer.
made the product. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
They
no.
literally already made the products, and they're in the market. And they're experienced with that. What does a broker do? What kind of distribution do I need? And all of that sort of thing.
And so you're going to get into the dog products business soon. That's nice. We all should have that. See, if you were a dog treat manufacturing guy, then the dog would be fat but quiet. So that's what a great look into how to get stuff from brain to shelf. Just amazing, really useful, and kind of inspiring. Really, like I think everyone, including me, is probably thinking, maybe I can do that. And I do believe that as we come out of this slight economic challenge we're currently enjoying as we turn out of the COVID, I think a big part of that driver for the American economy rebound is small business. And people who are willing to say, you know what, I got an idea and let's do it, because people like to buy that stuff. We're all going to have to make some changes. We've gotten lazy and ordering stuff from Amazon. Probably we're going to have to change that, but that's okay.
That's a big trend for sure. The whole online businesses and things like that.
And there's a difference between online. I like to really draw the difference between small businesses doing business on the internet and like I have to buy 400 rolls of toilet paper from Amazon. What? No, you don't. What a great, Paul. I'll let you ask any final questions because my mind's going in a couple directions. I think we might be done doing the show.
I think this has been a really valuable time with you, Lawrence. Thank you for educating our audience. And
of course, thank you guys.
Good, awesome. Good luck to us all, and thanks to you for listening, for watching, for being part of another episode of Business in the Know. And we will see you next time. Until then, keep thinking about cool ideas to bring to market, telling some good stories, and making a little bit of money.